The unsung hero of the Harris family. You know, Jessica's the only reason this family hasn't fallen apart, Margaret declared, her voice slicing through the chatter as she slid the mashed potatoes across the table. I froze mid-bite, the sharp edge of her words pricking at me. Across from me, Jessica beamed, her dazzling smile soaking up the praise like sunlight on a golden crown. I swallowed the retort bubbling up and kept my eyes on my plate. Mom, that's not true, Michael said softly, his voice a gentle ripple in the tense air. Margaret waved him off with a flick of her wrist. Oh, Michael, you're too kind to see it. Jessica's the glue, always smoothing things over, keeping us tight. Anna's great, don't get me wrong, but she's just not as involved. Her words hit like a quiet slap, familiar yet stinging. I'm Anna, Michael's wife of 8 years. And I'd long ago learned my place in this family, the dependable shadow to Jessica's radiant star. Margaret, my mother-in-law, worshipped her daughter with a devotion so fierce it blinded her to everyone else. Jessica could do no wrong. Me? I was the tolerated add-on, forever stuck in second place. I tried though, God. Did I try? I cooked elaborate dinners, hosted chaotic family get-togethers, and swooped in to fix emergencies. But no matter how much I gave, Margaret's spotlight always swung back to Jessica. I'd scrub the kitchen spotless after a rowdy night, and she'd thank Jessica for pulling it all together. I'd solve a crisis at the last second and she'd murmur, "That's Jessica's magic at work." At first, I chased her approval like a fool, thinking effort would crack her armor. But as the years piled on, I saw the truth. This wasn't about me. It was about Margaret's need to prop Jessica up on a pedestal she'd built herself. That night, dinner dragged on, each of Margaret's barbs sinking deeper. "Anna's so quiet," she said with a syrupy smile aimed at Jessica. "You're the one who lights up this family." My hands balled into fists under the table, but I forced a polite nod. Michael shot me a quick, sorry glance. He rarely challenged his mom's favoritism. By dessert, I checked out, retreating into my head. I don't need her approval, I told myself. My worth wasn't tied to her words. So, as I cleared plates and watched Jessica giggle with Margaret, a flicker of doubt gnawed at me. When will they see who's really keeping this ship afloat? Later, driving home. The car was thick with silence. Michael kept sneaking looks my way, testing the waters. Finally, he spoke. "I'm sorry about Mom," he muttered, eyes on the road. I let out a dry laugh. Why apologize for something she does every damn time? He gripped the wheel tighter. I don't know. I feel like I should say something, but I never know how to fix it. Michael, it's not your mess, I said, though the words felt thin. Your mom's made it clear who she thinks the family hero is, and it's not me. Nothing you say will shift that. He frowned but stayed quiet. That was Michael. Allergic to conflict, especially with Margaret. At home, I dove into the kitchen, stashing leftovers from the meal I'd slaved over. Cooking was my therapy, a way to wrestle control from chaos. Michael lingered in the doorway, watching. You know she doesn't mean it, right? She's just obsessed with this idea of Jessica. I spun to face him, frustration spilling over. It's not about Jessica, Michael. It's that your mom refuses to see me. I bust my ass for this family, cooking, cleaning, holding us together, and she acts like it's nothing. I'm invisible. He sighed, raking a hand through his hair. I know, Anna. I see it. I appreciate you. Then why don't you call her out? My voice sharpened. He hesitated, then shrugged. She won't listen. And I don't want a fight that goes nowhere. I turned back to the counter. Fine, I said, though it wasn't. I don't need her. I'll keep doing my part, and the truth will show itself eventually. That night, as I scrubbed dishes, I vowed to stop begging for scraps of recognition. Margaret and Jessica could cling to their fairy tale. I'd keep the real story alive in the background. Sooner or later, reality would catch up. Weeks later, the cracks started showing. Margaret grumbled about tight finances. Jessica whined about a scrap spa day. I brushed it off as normal hiccups, until Michael came home one night, stress carved into his face. He slumped at the kitchen table. What's wrong? I asked, sitting across from him. It's Mom, he said, rubbing his temples. She called, asking for money. Jessica borrowed a chunk from her, some friends failed business, and now Mom's drowning in bills. I blinked, stunned. Borrowed for what? He sighed. Another one of Jessica's big ideas. It tanked and Mom's paying the price. It wasn't shocking. Jessica was a whirlwind of impulse, always leaving someone else to mop up. Usually, that was Margaret, her ever-loyal safety net. What did you tell her? I asked. That we'd think about it, he said. But Anna, we can't just hand over cash. We're stretched thin too. I nodded, already crunching numbers in my head. Our budget was a tightrope: mortgage, groceries, a measly savings stash. No room for charity. Margaret's calls grew frantic over the next few days. Michael, you know how much I've done for this family, she pleaded once, voice quaking. If you and Anna could help just this once. Michael related all to me, torn. What do we do? He asked one night in bed. I stared at the ceiling, the weight pressing down. We can't give her money, Michael. But maybe there's another way. He frowned. Like what? We step in quietly. I said. If Margaret's too proud to admit she's sinking and Jessica's useless, someone has to. He didn't argue. If anyone can pull it off, it's you, he said. That night, I lay awake plotting. Margaret's blind faith in Jessica had landed her here, but I wouldn't let her crash, not for her sake, but for ours. It was time to take charge, even if it meant staying invisible. The next morning, I hit the ground running, notebook, calculator, coffee in hand. I pored over our finances, figuring out what we could spare, not much. You sure about this? Michael asked, watching me flip through bank statements. I'm not giving her cash, I said firmly. But if we can cut her expenses or rework her bills, it might save her. She's in this hole because Jessica's a wreck, and she won't admit it. I called a financial consultant I knew from work, digging into Margaret's mess, maxed out credit cards, overdue utilities. A mortgage payment looming like a guillotine. It was grim. For days I negotiated lower rates, set up payment plans, and chipped away at the chaos, all without Margaret knowing. Michael offered to tell her, but I stopped him. She'll shut it down if she knows it's me, I said. Pride's her shield. Jessica, meanwhile, stayed MIA. Margaret kept up her praise. Jessica's so stressed, doing so much for us. And I swallowed my irritation. The exhaustion was brutal. Juggling our life, Margaret's crisis, and fake smiles at family dinners. But I wouldn't crack. Not now. One night, Michael caught me on the couch, drained. You're incredible, he said, squeezing my hand. I just hope it works. I muttered. It will, he promised. You're the one holding us together, even if they don't see it yet. 2 weeks later, the tide turned. Margaret's bills were tamed, her mortgage adjusted. Her rates slashed. Small wins, but enough to keep her head above water. She still gushed about Jessica. She's my rock, keeping me calm. And I gritted my teeth, nodding along. Michael's sympathetic looks weren't enough anymore. Then came the breaking point. Dropping off payment paperwork at Margaret's, I overheard her on the phone with Jessica. Don't worry, sweetie. She cooed. I'll figure it out. You've done so much for us. My stomach churned. Done so much? Jessica had done squat, except dig the hole I'd been clawing Margaret out of. When I knocked, Margaret greeted me with her usual lukewarm courtesy. Anna, what a surprise. I handed her the folder. These are your new payment plans. Everything's sorted. She barely glanced at them. Thanks, but you didn't have to bother. Her dismissal stung, and as I drove home, fury erupted. I'd poured myself into saving her, and she didn't even care. That night, Michael found me attacking a pan in the kitchen. What happened? He asked. She doesn't give a damn, I snapped, voice shaking. I've killed myself fixing her life, and all she sees is Jessica. He hugged me as tears broke free. She'll see it someday, he said. She can't ignore the truth forever. After that, I drew a line. No more groveling for Margaret's approval. I'd finish what I started and let the chips fall. Over the next weeks, I kept streamlining her finances, watching her stability grow. Jessica faded from the scene, too busy for family time, and Margaret's excuses for her grew thinner. Then a bombshell. My consultant, Tom, called. Anna, Margaret's in better shape, but Jessica's been skimming her accounts for months. Small amounts, but it adds up. My breath caught. Not just neglect, sabotage. That night, I told Michael. His jaw tightened. This is too much. You've saved Mom, and Jessica's screwing her over. It's not about Jessica anymore, I said, resolve hardening. It's about Margaret seeing who's real. The next day, I called a family meeting. Margaret resisted. Jessica showed up late, but I pressed on. Handing Margaret a folder of proof, I said, this is the truth. What I've done and what Jessica's been doing. Margaret's hand shook as she read. Jessica jumped up. Mom, this is nonsense. Anna's jealous. But the numbers didn't lie. Margaret's voice cracked. Jessica, is this true? Jessica stammered. I was gonna pay it back, then bolted. Silence swallowed the room. Margaret looked at me, tears brimming. Anna, I don't know what to say. You don't have to, I replied. I did this because it was right, not for praise. But you need to see what your trust in Jessica almost cost you. She nodded, tears falling. I was so wrong. You've been the one holding us together. The words unlocked something in me, years of quiet struggle finally seen. Michael gripped my hand, pride in his eyes. They all know now, he said. I smiled. Lighter than I'd felt in ages. The truth was out and I was done hiding. In the weeks that followed, Margaret softened. Her calls came gentler, her apologies raw. One day she asked me for coffee. I need to explain, she said. At the cafe, she looked fragile, stirring her tea. I'm so sorry, Anna. I put Jessica first, ignored you. I thought I was keeping us close, but I pushed you away. You didn't have to save me, but you did. I see you now. Her honesty disarmed me. I didn't do it for thanks, I said. But hearing this, it matters. She teared up. I want to be better for you. For Michael. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Slowly she changed, learning her finances, seeking my input, thanking me. Jessica stayed distant, but her absence let us heal. One night, Margaret hosted a dinner, warm, genuine, no tension. Midway she raised her glass. I've been blind, she said, eyes on me. Anna, you're why we're still here. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. My throat tightened. Thank you, I whispered. Later, she pulled me aside. You taught me more than I can repay. Just keep going, I said. Driving home, peace settled in. I didn't need Margaret's not to know my worth, I'd always had it. But now I had a place at the table, earned not by force but by being me. And that was enough.